Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Christina Rivers.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast, post-game edition, coming to you after the Steelers' epic, unbelievable, vastly entertaining 17-7 win in the preseason, putting them at 0-0 for games that count, but 2-0 in the preseason. So, normally, you know, one of my brothers from another mother, either my middle brother from another mother, Joe Kuzma, or my younger brother or our baby brother, the professor of football, would be here to join us. But Joe's on the road, and the professor has to get up early, so he's out. And graciously, to help us kind of navigate the nuances of this wonderful preseason game, we are joined by sometime podcast contributor and excellent human being all around, the wonderful, the beatific, the fabulous Miss Tina Rivers. Tina, how you doing?
I'm doing great tonight, Brian. After the third quarter, I thought I was going to fall asleep, but I remembered, no, Brian needs me in this moment of desperation for the post-game. Stay awake, eat some nachos, chug some Coca-Cola, and get ready.
And we all appreciate that, provided that the nachos and the Coca-Cola don't come visiting during the podcast. And, in any way, shape, or form, be it, a gaseous emission from any orifice, actually, or not. Yes, I just said, and Tina, please don't burp and fart on the show.
And I was going to say, this episode is sponsored by Tums and Pepto-Bismol, but we can't officially say that, so it's not.
No, it's not. All right, so to get to business, the Steelers played a game against the Kansas City Chiefs. They ended up coming in on the victorious side, 17-7. We are going to start this post-game with something we usually do only in the regular season, and I meant to do it last time, and I forgot. Shame on me. Slap my hands. A Steel City Underground favorite, so to speak. We're going to look at this game and see who, if anyone, was a grown-ass man. This is our grown-ass man awards are essentially people who stood out, had a game, played above and beyond, and looked good. And we're going to keep it light. We're going to keep it, not go too in depth with it yet because it's preseason. But we'll pick one from offense and one from defense, and maybe one from special teams if you feel like it. But Tina, I will let you start this off with someone you felt was a grown-ass man in this game, be it offense or defense. Who you got?
Okay, let's start with the defensive side of the ball. I like the defense because it's all about defense this year, about getting quicker, faster, being more efficient, having good depth. And a lot of people are going to hear this right off the bat, and they're going to groan, and they're going to complain, and they're going to fill the comments field. But my grown-ass man award tonight goes to, are you ready?
I am.
Bud Dupree.
Big Bud. It's a twofer, because that's my
Big
guy,
Bud.
too. Big Bud. I don't actually, anybody who watched the game, I don't think that's a big surprise that Bud Dupree's going to get a grown-ass man award. But you tell me why you thought he deserved one.
Well, outside of getting the 2 sacks that he got tonight, everyone can say, well, those are preseason snaps and, you got backups in and everything. Regardless of that argument, during the offseason, Bud Dupree worked with a special training coach. And a lot of people kind of made fun of the tweet that was sent out by the coach showing Bud using better footwork, using quickness drills, burst speed drill type things, a lot of arm movement, hand movement, improved like swim move and being able to get past the offensive lineman. And when I was watching the video for the tweet, it intrigued me a little bit, especially because a lot of people were making fun of it, saying, it's all good, on a video of training, but can he transition that into playing in a game? And one thing I saw tonight that made me give him the grown-ass man award was that he wasn't getting washed out of place. He was actually getting into the Chiefs' offensive backfield. And if he wasn't making a sack, he was putting pressure on the quarterback. But not only that, there were several tackles that he was involved in where he grabbed the running back from behind and kept it from going for a gain of many yards. And so that's why I gave him the award tonight.
Yeah, look, it's great that Bud got 2 sacks in a game. I think it's fantastic. I want to note that I understand that the second sack especially probably came against JV-level offensive line players. But the thing that stood out to me was Bud looks more controlled. He looks like he was more into the flow of the game. And I don't want to say this in a negative way, but you often hear about how the game slows down for people. And this looked like what I think we hoped we would have seen 2-3 years ago, where the game slows down. But that's the way Bud looked tonight. I don't want to read too much into a preseason game, but if this is the Bud Dupree we're going to get this season, I think we have a real we're talking about Woodley Harrison type threat from the ends. If you're going to double digit potentially on both sides of the line from both of our outside linebackers, potentially double digit sack numbers. We've been waiting for Bud Dupree to break out. They gave him his extension, his 5th-year extension. It's a big chunk of change, $9 million or something like that, and he's playing for a contract. And I think I don't know whether that contract will be with the Steelers, regardless. Even if he pops out, a nice 10 or 11 or 12, sack season, somebody's going to pay him. It may or may not be the Steelers, but we'll have to see. So, but I was very impressed with what I saw. He looked okay. He even had a pass defense. He looked okay in coverage. He looked quick. But again, the key to me was he looked fast but in control, because the biggest issue with Bud has been fast and out of control. Either washing himself out of plays by overrunning the plays, or just getting taken out of plays by an over-aggressiveness. And it looked better. I'm not convinced 100%, but it was a good start.
Well, and I think it'll be interesting. I mean, while I was watching the game, I was going back and reviewing certain plays. And one thing I noticed that got my attention was he wasn't focusing so much on who was opposite him. He was bending down. He was moving his body and keeping his eyes on the ball and on the quarterback. And that's something a little bit different than I've seen from him in the past. And I'm hoping that's an indicator that the skills he learned during these training sessions, that it taught him to have more awareness, not just pay attention to the guy in front of you, but pay attention to how the play is going to move, which way the line's going to pull, when the quarterback's going to snap it. He did get called for, what was it, violation of
neutral
encroachment, basically, The neutral zone violation, which some will argue that he was drawn offsides. I couldn't tell, but I think it'll be interesting to watch as he progresses to see just how much quicker he gets off the ball, because he isn't focused just on his quote-unquote man, but he's paying attention to where the ball is.
Yeah, on that particular play, he has a legitimate gripe because the tackle is leaning. And it's probably never going to be called because, I think they even pointed it out during the game. Charlie Batch probably pointed it out during the game that where his feet were placed is a violation right there and then. It's illegal, but they let him get away with it all the time, and Bud's fast, so the guy was scared. And okay. All right, so that takes care of our grown-ass man on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I'm going to give you my offensive grown-ass man. There's only one guy who stands out. I mean, there are other guys who stand out, but lose the award because of the level of competition they were playing against. But the guy who stands out, and I'm hoping to say this sentence many times this season, James Washington is a grown-ass man. James Washington looks so much different than he looked last preseason. He looks faster. He looks more comfortable. He looks more confident. He's catching everything that's thrown at him. Just a real solid second preseason game. I'm not ready to say that he's being launched into the number 2 receiver role, because I don't think he is. I think it's wrapped up. I think Dante Moncrief is going to be the number 2 receiver role. And let me just say, Dante Moncrief, unfortunately, did not have a great initial Steelers thing. His introduction to the Steelers was a reception and a fumble. Wasn't so good. But I think that's probably locked up unless he does that in a real game, in which case he could have some issues. But I'm going to knock on wood. Where's my head? Hold on a second. Okay. There you go. So just that was a fluke one-time thing. So, but he looks good. The thing is, he looks good with either quarterback. He looked good with Dobbs throwing him the ball. He looked good with Rudolph throwing him the ball. He just continues to look better and more comfortable in the position. And you start talking about Juju and Dante Moncrief and James Washington, and we'll talk about Deontay Spencer in a little bit, but you're talking about us going Mr. Big who? Mr. Big Chest what? Who cares? Don't need him. Don't want him. Thank God he's gone. It's looking good to me. It was a really nice second preseason performance for him. He's my grown-ass man on offense. What do you got, Tina?
Well, I would say James Washington was the MVP of the game, if you could give an MVP award out in a preseason game. Well, one thing I've noticed, James Washington is kind of a leaner, taller kid, and he's not afraid to go after contested catches. Unfortunately, last year, it looked like he hesitated a little bit, and he is balling. To use a word, he is balling during the preseason. He had one of his catches tonight he went to the high point to catch a ball along the sideline. I mean, I'm not sure that there was any defender within 60 yards that could have gotten as high as he did to make that catch.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And then on another catch, he actually avoided a potential huge hit by a defender coming across the field. He actually somehow torqued his body and still caught the ball and avoided the hit, which shows a level of athleticism that a lot of receivers don't have, but something that the Steelers absolutely need. So I guess we're 2 for 2 on those grown-ass man awards.
And that's the way it should be, to be honest. In a preseason game like this, there's not a lot of guys that are going to stand out as grown-ass man. And I'm sorry, I'm probably not giving grown-ass man awards to guys who make big hits, unless it really startles me in the fourth quarter. Somebody might want to complain that I'm not giving Duck Dynasty a grown-ass man award for the touchdown throw and his poise in the pocket. But I'm sorry, he's playing against guys who are going to be on the street. So I'm not ready to do that. Maybe he could be a runner-up.
Not to him. I wouldn't. I think Hodges is. We may differ on where we see him. Duck Dynasty. I'll give an honorable mention to James Conner for having the wherewithal to catch a bobbled pass that was thrown low and be able to scoop it between his legs and still maintain control of it for it to be a completion.
Yeah,
that's my honorable mention.
I like that because it was a very impressive feat or feat of handwork, so to speak, hands and feet work maybe. But yeah, I like that. Yeah, I can go with you on that. The rest of it,
if he has, I was going to say, I don't want to interrupt you, but if he, in the future is looking for a really, really big payday, maybe he can go play basketball for the NBA.
No.
But I want him to stay in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I want him to
Pittsburgh.
stay with the Steelers.
Yeah. All right. So that's our grown ass man section. Let's look at I guess what is considered the biggest camp battle now as a second game for quarterback. It's backup quarterback. It's who's going to be the number 2. I'll tell you that in the first game, it was pretty clear to me that Mason Rudolph looked better. In this game, it's pretty clear to me that Josh Dobbs may have lost the job throwing that interception in the red zone, but I wasn't overly impressed with either of them in this game. And that doesn't go to say they played badly, because Josh Dobbs made some really nice throws. Mason Rudolph made some really nice throws. But you talked about that throw that James Washington had to sky to get. Yeah, I know. Mason Rudolph played with James Washington. He knows he can probably go up and get it, but it was a badly overthrown ball. I mean, it was not, there was nobody near him. He didn't need to have to put that kind of air on the ball, and maybe it got deflected because it had to go over a guy's hand at the line. I don't know for sure. I'd have to go back and look again. I just remember thinking to myself, geez, he's lucky James Washington can get up that high, because it was a high throw. Neither of them really was overly impressive in any specific drive. I mean, Rudolph, I think, had a really nice scoring drive that, ended in Jalen Samuels' really nice run. But even during that drive, it seemed like there were just several mistakes. The one that that keeps coming back to me is the one where he had what seemed like forever. He did a nice job evading pressure in the pocket, and this isn't all on him, but it feels like he should have maybe found another option. He had a nice job avoiding pressure, and then he throws it to try and get it to Eli Rogers, who I think failed miserably because he did not come back for the ball. He just kept running around in the end zone, and that allowed Kansas City to be right on top of him. He needed to come back for that ball, but considering that that's the way it was, maybe there was another target. I don't know. Again, until we would have like an all-22 to look at, there's no way for me to tell from watching on television. But the third quarterback, let me give the stats here. Josh Dobbs was 6 of 11 for 95 yards and 1 interception, a passer rating of 45.6. Mason Rudolph was 10 of 15, 77 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 79-yard passer rating. Delvin Hodges, Duck Dynasty, was 2 of 4, 38 yards, 1 TD, 122.9 passer rating. Now, again, I get it. he's at the – and he should have had 2 touchdowns, frankly, because Deontay Spencer should have had 2 touchdowns, because we'll talk about that before we're done.
Okay.
There's no way that I can avoid not talking about that at some point. I don't want to leap into it too early. I keep saying this. I don't see any way that Hodges makes it onto this team. But if Dobbs really underperforms in the last 2 preseason games and Hodges really overperforms in the last 2 preseason games, we didn't think Landry Jones was going to get cut. Who knows? I still think the chances are slimmer than 1%, maybe even 1% of 1%. But I like the moxie that he has. I like the way that he stays in the pocket. His accuracy is, I think, better than either of those guys, but they have a better arm. Both of them have more talented arms. But that's the way it kind of comes down. So
I would have to agree. As far as Hodges, I think that he has, you called it moxie. He kind of has a different air of confidence than even Rudolph and Dobbs have. Almost, and I don't know, maybe it's because of the competition. That feeling, get yourself psyched up and say, hey, I'm going to earn this job. I'm going to go out here and do it. Now you can't just base the performance tonight of those three quarterbacks just on passer rating, certainly, because you look at how much time Rudolph spent on the field versus them throwing Dobbs into the game to run a 1-minute drill before halftime, and then he comes out. You kind of start off slow, and then Hodges gets kind of thrown in during the fourth quarter. So there's no consistency as far as like just, based on a stat or based on a quarterback rating, this guy must be better. We can't argue in favor of that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think Hodges definitely giving both of those guys notice that, hey, you're going to have to step up your game because I'm not backing down. I'm going to do my thing and try to win a spot. And if you slip up or you underperform, then that's just better for me. And I think that's why training camp and preseason competition is healthy, because it pushes guys to give their all, but to give their all under control. And I think with Dobbs's pass that you were mentioning, yes, Rodgers should have come back for it. Is Dobbs feeling a little bit of pressure, and so he was a little bit out of control? I don't know. But at this point, I would put Rudolph as the number 2 with the real competition between Dobbs and Hodges at this point.
And I think that's the way most Steelers Nation feels. And while Mike Tomlin very, very emphatically stated that neither one of them has an advantage yet, it's clear that that's what he was going to say regardless. He's got 2 more games to evaluate these guys.
Yeah.
He's not going to go, oh, yeah, I think Rudolph's definitely ahead of him right now, unless it was so blatant. But even then, I'm not sure he would say that.
He's just going to have the crowning ceremony right there in before Game 3 happens.
Yeah. What changed for me was we left the first game feeling, I think, much more confident about both Dobbs and Rudolph. I did not come out of this game thinking that both performed as well as they did in the first game. I thought that they dropped off a bit in this game. They played a little less effectively in many ways. And again, that's not saying they didn't do some good things, because they did. One of Dobbs' passes to, I think, James Washington was an absolutely gorgeous throw. A couple of Rudolph's passes were really nice, but then they also had their downsides, and it just wasn't as crisp for me. So do I think that one made a better statement in this game? I don't think this game changed anything. I think the last game in training camps is what puts Rudolph ahead of Dobbs right now. But if it was neck and neck, I think it's still neck and neck, because I don't think anybody really advanced their case in this game.
Yeah, and this was kind of a strange game, because I noticed that the Steelers came out offensively. They came out relatively conservative. I think on and I could be mistaken, but I think in the first 4 plays of each quarterback's first series, they were asked to hand off the ball twice.
Yeah.
At least once. So they came out handing off. So to me, that's not saying to a guy, hey, we want you to go out there and really, really just give us highlights. Not when you're saying, okay, we're just going to have you ease into it and hand the ball off. But I agree. I think that the competition was pretty much set as far as like the bar based on the first preseason game, and not so much this game. And I think too, Kansas City is a much more competitive and defense than the Buccaneers. And so maybe there was a little bit of thinking of, let's not go crazy. This is an AFC foe that was on fire last year. Let's not go crazy. Let's play a little bit conservative. Let's, conserve. Let's not get injuries, that type of thing. But I totally agree with you that I don't think that tonight's performance by any of the quarterbacks could be stamped as, oh yeah, that's there's no doubt he's the winner right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as far as the running backs go, I think James Conner looked fine. He looked like James Conner, which is all you really expect. I thought Jalen Samuels looked really good. That the one touchdown that he had was a really nice run. I thought he looked like I feel like he looks like he's got a little more speed. Maybe he dropped a little weight. I don't know. Benny Snell, I thought, performed better in this game than he did in the first game. Still being said, I'm not seeing the burst I expect out of him. Maybe it's just because he's thinking too much. Maybe the game hasn't slowed down yet for him. I don't know, but I am encouraged to see that this was a better performance, I thought, than last week. Beyond that, I mean, the rest of the running backs all kind of grouped in. Didn't really. I mean, what am I going to say about guys who are playing in the third and fourth quarter?
It was underwhelming.
Yeah.
It just wasn't exciting.
Yeah.
But people got to realize that, and I think most NFL fans do, that the preseason is an opportunity to get as many of your players that you have on your training camp roster, real game situation snaps and touches, because there is no tempo like being in the game.
Right.
So getting them the ball and giving them the opportunity, a lot of times it isn't because they want to see if they can break a 90-yard run. It's to get them to get them up to speed, to see how the defense moves, the flow of the game. So the fact that they didn't have 600 yards rushing between all their running backs, it's a preseason game. So let's be realistic. And I think as far as Jalen Samuels, to me, he looks a little thinner, maybe more lean muscle mass, not so much quote unquote weight, but he looked fresher tonight to me than James Conner did, and it isn't because of the touchdown run. He just looked maybe a little bit more relaxed. I guess that would be the best word.
Maybe. I mean, like I said, I thought Conner looked fine. But here's the thing, and we're going to talk about the line, at least on the offensive side here real quick, because I had tweeted this out that Chuks Okorafor was following up a bad performance by starting another one because he gave up the early sack and got beat badly on it. But he did settle down a lot after that, and he had a holding penalty, I think, but you didn't hear a lot more about him. And as we always say, with an offensive lineman, that's a good thing. You don't want them to be highlighted because it means something went wrong normally. So he did settle into the game afterwards, which I think is a good thing. But it was discouraging, and he does seem to be struggling with outside speed rush and getting his feet in the right position. And as Zach has said several times, it's odd because he has really good feet and he looks good in camp, and it's just not translating over, or does not appear to be, and he doesn't know what that is. Again, could it be because the game is not slowed down enough for him right now? Could it be because they're not giving him any help? Giving him a chip off of that side from a running back or a tight end. I don't know the answers to that. Again, you don't get to review as much on television as you would once the tapes are up. But I think it's not surprising to me that some of the running game didn't look as crisp as they wanted when you've got Filer in there as playing guard. You've got Okorafor on one side on tackle. And, while we had Ramon Foster for a little while and we had Alejandro Villanueva for a little while, you've got B.J. Finian at center. So you've got half of your line that's not really the starting line, or at least they're not in their normal positions. So, that takes away from it, and it also, limits what you can do, running the ball effectively because you don't have that same group and that continuity. But
on that early sack on Rudolph,
Yeah.
I noticed it's kind of funny because it was Okofor who beat Okorafor.
Yeah.
But and it wasn't okay. Yeah, that's my bad pun for the night.
Yeah.
But anyway, I noticed right after that they brought Vance McDonald in and did have him kind of helping on that side. So, and that may be something that they'll have to do if he, Chucks can't pick up the pace a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a little that of all my things that I haven't had anything really heavily disappointing, but I have been disappointed that what from all reports seemed like a good camp for him isn't translating to gameplay. But we'll have to see. He's still got a couple games to try and pick things up. On the defensive side, there was another encouraging moment. And again, I don't want to read too much into this, but Artie Burns had a nice game. And that's not something I'm used to saying lately. But He had some nice pass defenses. He was, aggressive in tackling, made a couple nice tackles, was involved in what I believe really was Terrell Edmonds causing a fumble that Artie got credit for briefly, but was at least involved in the sense that he had the first hit that allowed Edmonds to come in and poke the ball out. You didn't hear Artie Burns' name in a bad connotation during this game. And it was good to see that. Hopefully that continues through the rest of the season. How did you see that?
Well, I thought he played with a much higher level of intensity. And one thing that has been a complaint about Burns is his giving receivers too soft a coverage. Well, tonight he seemed like he was locked in and ready to go.
Yeah, Joe has said from camp that he's been playing kind of PO'd, and he needs to. His career, at least Steelers' career, it's on the line for him this season. And if he has a poor season, then there's no place for him to go with the Steelers. He's going to be let go, and he'll try and latch on someplace else. But he has so much potential, it would be unfortunate if that was the case. So the one downside here I will say is Brian Allen did not have a good game later in the game. When he had his opportunities, he whiffed badly on a couple tackles. I thought that was noticeable, again, in a bad way, which is unfortunate because I like Brian Allen and I like what he, again, has as potential, but just not really seeing it. Let's note that the biggest difference between this game and the first game was the lack of Devin Bush. Mark Barron played this game. Devin Bush did not play at all. Tomlin held him out because he missed a couple practice sessions earlier in the week, decided not to risk potential injury or a longer issue. Mark Barron was fine. I think, again, he's fast, he's quick, he's competent. But you could tell that it wasn't Devin Bush in there. At least that's the way I saw it. And plus, we also started to see Matakevich early.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely tell a speed difference between. And that's not to put Barron down, but there's definitely a speed difference, especially dropping back into coverage when Devin Bush is out there.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Beyond that, I didn't see anything dramatically standing out to me from anybody else on the defensive side of the ball, either on the upside or the downside. Ulysses Gilbert was okay, but he was sort of non-existent early in the game. Tazar Skipper was, again, a presence during the latter parts of the game when they're both still playing against JV guys. And I think Gilbert got into the game a little earlier this time, but didn't make himself known, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, sometimes it's great if you can make splash, but if you can just do your job, that's also a good thing at that level.
Well, and you don't want negative splash.
Right, you don't want negative splash, and you didn't have that.
with the offensive lineman, if your name's not called, that means you did your job. Well, sometimes it's okay to play relatively anonymously in some of these positions on defense because you didn't get called for pass interference. You didn't get called for a helmet to a defenseless receiver. You did your job. And I have one thing that just bugged me the entire game, because we're talking about defense, is where was the consistency with Mike Hilton? Yeah. One minute he's lighting the guy up, and the next minute he's flying through the air, arm tackling, or just non-existent in the play. That was just really bizarre to me, his performance tonight.
Yeah, what it seemed like, and again, I'd have to go back and double check, but what it seemed like to me is he actually did not play well as the nickel corner, but when he got moved into a safety role, he played much better. And I don't know that's tough for Mike Hilton, quite honestly, because they need him to be a solid nickel corner. But it's good that he has some versatility. I was disappointed. He got beat a couple times, was back on coverage. I don't know whether, it's hard to tell whether he, didn't get help that he expected, all those kind of things. But he didn't seem to be overly upset with anybody, so that makes me think you just got beat. You're right. I forgot about Hilton, and I shouldn't have, because I was kind of unpleasantly surprised with the initial play, and then as it got a little better as time went on, I guess I just kind of passed it over. And so thank you for reminding all of us of that.
Well, I was going to say, there's going to be a couple Chiefs players that are going to have like sore abdominal muscles or bruised kidneys tomorrow. That might be asking their wives or significant others for some ice packs and some icy hot. Because when he was making a play and hit guys, he was hitting them hard. But then it was like, and I think you're right. Being put in that nickel position versus playing at the safety position. Maybe he needs the preseason. These two next preseason games, it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. But I'd like to see more consistency from him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Shout out, Mike Hilton. We want more consistency.
So, other than that, I need to talk about the other group that is on the field with these two teams, because
the special teams.
No, not those guys. No, not the special teams. The special teams actually I thought, okay tonight. Deontay Spencer had a couple nice run backs. Johnny Holton didn't really do anything to make a case for himself, unlike the first game. But Deontay Spencer had a really nice run back. But it's not the special teams that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but you can't overlook the bobble punt return by Deontay Johnson.
I know, that was bad.
Luckily he fell on it.
Yep.
So he probably took his eyes off the ball. So we're not going to talk about special teams. What are we going to talk about?
Well, now you're making me talk about them. So, and I want to talk about Deontay Johnson because he had a rough initial start to this game. Dropped a pass, bobbled a punt. But then he kind of got into the rhythm. Had a nice, quick kind of slant, A-B-ish. No, I can't say that. I'm sorry. Rewind. I didn't say those letters together. Helmet boy. That's what I'm calling him now. Helmet boy-ish type, little quick slant for yards. And then had, a great touchdown pass. Nice catch from Duck Dynasty. And should have had a second one. Which then leads me into the people I want to talk about. The refs stink.
All right.
The refs stink.
The
officials who are terrible. Now, before we get to this pass interference one, which is going to cause me to have sleepless nights in fear for the rest of the season with this rule change, I want to talk about the holding call on Alejandro Villanueva that he got tagged with. Was such baloney and ticky-tack nonsense, it made me mad. But whatever. Holding is holding, and you can call it all the time. The one that really, and this is one that the Steelers benefited from. Eli Rogers had a nice catch. It was nice to see Eli Rogers, by the way. I'll give him and his hard hat a shout out. But Eli Rogers had a nice catch that went down the middle of the field and then got an additional lump of yards from a defenseless player call. No, it was a terrible call. I agree.
That was not a good call.
That was, I don't know what the refs were looking at other than they thought, oh, he went really fast towards that guy. And I think the air was defenseless because it wasn't that hard to hit. And it just really wasn't a defenseless player. It was bad. It was a bad call, which was really the only one that I really had a fit with. But then we get to the fourth quarter. We get to this really nice route that Deontay Johnson runs. He makes an interesting move and does, admittedly, he touched the defensive guy. But touching him is not the same as necessarily. It's like Joe Hayden's interference call in the end zone in New Orleans that was not interference. This was as bad as that. And it's fine for the refs to screw it up because they stink anyway. But then they review it. And they review it because it's a scoring play. Well, it's not a scoring play. First of all, this is how stupid this all went. It wasn't a scoring play. It was a potential scoring play, but it couldn't have been a scoring play because they threw a penalty on it, which negated the score. So it didn't have to be reviewed. It should have been Mike Tomlin's challenge.
Okay, now you're getting ticky-tacky with definitions. Potential scoring play? Come on.
Well, it's not. That's my point. It's not a scoring play. So, because no score existed off of that play. Therefore, there should not be a automatic review of all scoring plays because it wasn't a scoring play. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely.
So it should have been Mike Tomlin's challenge. Now, the Steelers benefited from the fact that the refs don't know their own stupid rules and decided, no, we're going to have this be a booth review because it could have been a scoring play. Well, it wasn't. There was no could have been. It couldn't have been because of the flag. It should have, and you shouldn't even have reviewed it. Yeah, you shouldn't even have reviewed it unless it was challenged. So it's a booth review, and they still get it wrong, which that aggravates me no end. This means that if this group of reviewers reviewed the pass interference call against Joe Hayden, they still would have got it wrong. It's terrible. The refs are so bad. And this rule...
Was it the same people doing the reviewing that did the reviews for the Washington Redskins and, what was it, Cincinnati?
I don't know. Probably because it's in New York. I think the reviews are all done in New York.
Those are perfect examples of just how ridiculous this quote-unquote rule is and the headache it's going to cause this entire season.
Yeah, I don't often give Eric Herman, one of our editor-in-chief or whatever his title is, a shout-out. But I will give him a shout-out because he tweeted a couple times after that, what is the point of these reviews if you're just going to still get it wrong? And I agree. What is the point of making offensive pass interference a reviewable penalty if you still can't get it right because you're just that bad? I don't know. Yes, I'm incensed about this. The refs stink. The refs always stink, and I can't help it. They stink and they annoy me. And it's not, as I said in this earlier, it isn't even just the calls that go against us. It annoys me the calls that we get that are so bad. And that's it. I just can't. I'm literally not going to sleep well because of worrying now about OPIs or pass interference rules and reviews of pass interference going forward to the season, costing us games. It's that bad. If I want them to no longer make it reviewable because they can't get it right no matter what they do.
Well, and you would, if you were smart or had forethought, you might think that they'd say, let's try this out in the preseason and see how disruptive it is. See how many we get right versus, in game, and then go back and look at it and see, did we make the right call? Nope, we totally blew it. Okay, by the end of the preseason, if it shows that it's disruptive of the game and it's not working, then let's not use it. But the NFL didn't have that forethought, and that's often the case, unfortunately. And especially when there's rule changes, and now we're going to have to live with this. And unfortunately, instead of counting sheep, you're going to be imagining receivers going for the ball, and getting penalized. That's your future, and I kind of feel sorry for you, just a little bit.
I just feel like if I had any hair, I mean, I have more hair than Joe, but I keep my hair I keep my hair cut pretty low. And if I let it grow out at all, I would be pulling it out. And by the end of this season, I'd look like a dog with mange. I am so not looking forward to having to hashtag the refs stink constantly all season long. But there's no getting away from it. So I hope that there aren't a lot of close games that get decided by really bad calls, because it's going to be brutal. And then everybody was worried they were going to overturn Deontay Johnson's second touchdown. They didn't, so I will give them credit for not overturning that one, because it was, by the new definition of a catch rule, it was a catch. And they did let that one stand. So there you have it. I don't know what else to say about this game. It was a preseason game. Much like many preseason games, I didn't think that there was any real, gigantic jump out by anybody. I don't know that anybody that isn't already locked into the starting lineup made their case for the 53 in this game. But I don't think necessarily anybody failed to make their case, except, sadly, maybe Kevin Radar, who really had a couple bad holding calls, and dropped a couple passes, and did not, unfortunately, did not stand out in a good way. That's sad for Joe.
Not only that, but I just have one kind of like last thing, and I didn't get to talk to you about this beforehand, but the tight end situation.
Oh.
Now they released a couple people, and they brought in another tight end. And when I saw the transaction list this week, I thought, okay, I thought we kind of had the tight end thing figured out. We talked about it during the off season, that this would be an area of focus, because with Jesse James moving on and Xavier Grimble, we know he's more of a blocking back than a receiver. How are they going to do this? You got Ryan Switzer. He's not a tight end. He's a receiver, but you can use him all sorts of different sub packages. What are they doing bringing in another tight end? Then we get to the game tonight, and we see Xavier Grimble just have a terrible performance, non-spectacular. I believe he had at least 2 drops, and he needs to not spin after he makes a catch. And I made a tweet about this, and it's like I told you, it was my best tweet this year. And it was when they spin like that, it makes me think of my bra being in the washing machine on the spin cycle. You got to protect what needs protected, and you got to protect the ball. So when they spin like that, it always makes me nervous. The fact that Vance McDonald caught a ball and then fumbled it forwards out of bounds.
Yeah.
What's up with the tight end group?
I'll give Vance a pass.
I'm kind of scratching my head going, I'm not sure what's going on with the tight ends.
I'll just give Vance a pass, because it's going to happen every now and then. But Xavier Grimble dropping a pass because big, gigantic Xavier Grimble is worried about the crossing defensive back, that's just bad. I'm sorry. This is the same guy who I'm going to run over people. That's why I must crush them, and I fumbled the ball. No, I'm sorry. You can't have it both ways. You cannot fumble that ball in Denver out of bounds and lose a touchdown because you have to run over people and then be scared of a tiny defensive back coming across the middle and alligator arms a catch in the preseason. No. You can't do that.
We need him to be fearless. If he's going to be the X-Man, he needs to catch that ball and protect it. And not worry, not like you said, he doesn't need to truck people. He he needs to catch the ball unprotected. So I'm hoping to see improvement from the tight ends, because the tight ends are one of my favorite groups, not just the Steelers, just in general, NFL. The tight ends have always been kind of fascinating to me, because they're kind of like your Swiss Army knives. They're multi-purpose. You can use them lots of different ways. So I want to see more from the tight ends.
Yeah, there's a good chance that I'm hoping they're going to look for some help. Zach Gentry did not get any playing time, by the way, because he was injured. And I did want to cover this based on Tomlin's review presser at the end of the game. Benny Snell has a bit of a groin issue, and Chicolo has a chest issue. According to Tomlin, neither appear to be serious. And I did like his comment about, because he did get asked about his challenge or not challenge or whatever it was, and what he thought of it, and his response was, "I'll keep that to myself." Which is, it's because I want to keep my money, because I don't got nothing good to say. And my mama said, when you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say nothing. and that was that.
Obviously, in that moment, he was living in at least a tiny bit of his fears.
Yeah, well, it may be just common sense. I don't know. I don't know if he was afraid of having to pay it. He just was like, I'm not supposed to, so I'm not gonna. And it's preseason. Why get fined beating up the refs for preseason? That's us. We're not going to get fined. We can beat the refs up in preseason because they stink all year round, and we're never going to not beat them up. But that's beside the point. Okay, so
okay. Now I have to tell you something. Okay,
I want to tell you, I was glad you brought up your tweet about the spin cycle. It was such a great tweet, and if you're not following Tina, you should be, because you're missing out on good stuff.
Well, the spin cycle. We all know what the spin cycle's like. Here's for those out there. I am an Iowa native, so physically my home is located in Iowa, which is kind of Chiefs Kingdom, as they call it. So unfortunately, I got to listen to Trent Green prattle on tonight. But here's a what moment for you. Mm-hmm. Reggie Ragland at the beginning of the game, staring down the kids during the terrible towel twirl. That was my what moment for the night. I couldn't believe it. So Chiefs Kingdom, stay classy.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, let's intimidate children. But okay, whatever. So we're getting a little spacey because it's late, and the game was delayed because of lightning and thunder and Bob Pompiani. If you didn't watch the pregame, let me just tell you, you missed something fun, because Bob Pompiani had a nice lightning strike behind him, and I'm pretty sure he needed to change his drawers. He was a little bit startled, and so he was happy for the delay. He's like, you know what? I brought an extra pair. I need to go change, because I think he pooped his pants. I could be wrong. But
he's on the phone with Active Style right now.
Yeah. Like, can you please send me some new underpants? Okay, that's enough, and I shouldn't make fun of Bob Pompiani because it's too easy. But Tina, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming to the rescue, our sister from another mister. And any last thoughts?
Other than I hope that the third preseason game just really has somebody just really step up who isn't James Washington, because we already know he can step up. No. Yep. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, at least with this next preseason game, we will get finally a glimpse of the full starting lineups, probably both on offense and defense. Ben Roethlisberger will probably play in this third preseason game. It's usually where the starters get their little bits. So we'll talk about that when we look at our pregame for the Titans. But other than that, I think we're going to let it go here again. Her name is Tina. Thank you again, Tina, for being here and sharing this time with us. My name is Brian, and as we like to say at the end of these, it's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.